So to the presentation from Novotek themselves, you met Erik earlier in the welcome. He will introduce the octoplant platform and talk about how it works and how it helps with everything from version control to reporting in this regard. And again, if you have a question for Erik, please make a note of it, and we'll try to save 5 minutes or so at the end of presentation for questions relating specifically to octoplant and Erik, and then there'll be time, as mentioned now several times, to pick up in the final Q&A round as well. So let's move along. Try to keep the I was going to say try to keep the remote out of reach of anything, and don't stand in front of the screen or things will explode, I'm sure, next time around. But in any case, Erik, the floor is yours. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that fantastic introduction, Anders. Unfortunately, my colleague, the other Anders, who is supposed to do this presentation for us today, is off sick today, so I have volunteered to step in and support you in this presentation. So let's get started, and hoping for the best, obviously, with the technology component here. So NIS2 apart, what you're looking at out there at the moment on the factory floor is a very sort of hostile environment in a way. The probability of cyber attacks, as you all know, is growing, if not on a daily basis, then generally speaking, still fast. The number of devices that you have on your factory floor, of course, is increasing rapidly as well. And of course, because things are becoming more and more online, and the production sites tend to become more customer-centric as well. And this, of course, means that the batch sizes and the updates to the batches tends to be more frequent and faster. Obviously, increased digitalization, need I probably not point out, is of course a key issue. And also, as I was talking to some of you earlier today, getting skilled people to actually support you in this is becoming an increased problem. So automation is kind of the key to address some of these issues. So even NIS2 apart, you're going to have to look at this anyways, because your environment is changing fast. So to sort of address this, to protect your OT operations, there are a couple of points that you need to address. The first one, of course, is reliability. So when we talk about backups, you need to take out the human. Let's see if I can get this one to work. The human component needs to be taken out of this as much as possible, because it is a very serious cause of errors. Data security. It's also sort of makes sense that the backups you do take of your OT environments, of course, needs to be reliable, and you need to be able to actually use them if need be. Disaster recovery. Not only do you need to have it, but you also need to address the fact that you need to be able to get hold of it very fast, and you need to easily use that backup to restart your production or your sites. Again, to schedule this is sort of also, I think it's an often overlooked issue, because many people tend to sort of, we do a backup whenever we do changes, but you need to address it a little bit more systematically than that. So having a automated, preferably regular routine of taking backups ensures better quality. So this is also quite important. And the final point goes back to the manpower issue I mentioned before. If you can automate all this, you can use your scarce human resources on other valuable things out there. So this is going to be a way for you both to increase security, but also obviously to save hours spent from your team. So how do we get there? That's the question. What you're looking for and what you need is a system that can sort of address all of this in one go. So like an umbrella that you can use for your entire site. Because what I'm seeing when I talk to people is that they do have probably often a way of addressing a specific kind of PLCs, making sure that they're back up. They might have a system for sensors, for field devices or whatever, but rarely do they have like a unified system that can actually do this for them. And this is what octoplant is actually able to provide you with. So one platform that can do all of this across all these weird devices and legacy systems and whatever you have sitting out there. So this is sort of the vision, the idea with octoplant. So and like adding a little bit to that, because like what you really need to ask yourself when you have these sorts of setups is, how do I address all the why, the where, the who, the when, and the why, the questions that you're being asked out there in the factory. So where do I find the latest version? I'm sure a lot of you have heard that question before. Who has changed what? Where, when has the last backup been run? Why was the change done? So somebody changed something, but why did they actually do that? And why is the version on the controller different from the latest version on the server? Does any of you sort of recognize these questions? People are nodding, yeah. I tend to agree. This is really a key question. So you need the umbrella that covers all of it, and you need to be able to address the specifics as well. So combining those two things is really, really very important. So how does octoplant solve this? I think for the technical demo that my colleague Kubilai will be doing later on today, we can dive a little bit more into exactly how this is built and how it's done. But basically, the idea, the core idea with octoplant is that it's contained within your OT environment. So from a security perspective, it's going to be a very easy sell for you guys, because you don't need to have like something sitting necessarily anyways in the cloud. It can be held within your environment. So basically, a typical setup would be that or you can do that on your own if you want to, would install octoplant on a server on your local site, and then all the users will have a specific client. Again, depending on the user access rights and whatnot, it would be a little bit different, but they'll have a client. And the way they would work on a daily basis does not change, so you don't have to present them with a brand new sort of workday. It's all going to stay exactly the same. But through that client, they will access the server. They can have a look at the specific project that's relevant for them. They'll check it out on the client. If it's a Siemens TIA project, it'll open Siemens the TIA portal, and they can do work exactly as they would do before octoplant. When they're done, they save it and check it back into the server. So all the logging, so who did this, when did they do it, why did they do it, it's automatically captured in this process in one go. Then of course you can have the server sitting there and connected to all the field devices on the factory floor, where you can actually set it up to do automatic backups as well. So you have the version control sitting there, but you also have the automatic components sitting below it, which can be set up fairly easily, if I may say so. So these two things in their own right are quite important, but the really neat feature here is that when you do an automatic backup, for example, it actually takes the project up to the server, and then it can compare it to the previous version sitting on the server. So not only do you have a backup now, but you also have insights into what's actually going on my factory floor. Has somebody been out there making changes, messing about with anything or something? So you get visibility. And I think it's one of the things I often talk to my clients about is visibility, because a lot of you will probably have a little bit of an opaque view into what's actually going on the factory floor. But with a system like octoplant, you will know, and you'll be able to get reports and all on what's actually going on at this level. So this is opening up your ability to address some of the questions that Franz rightly pointed out earlier. You need visibility for that. And clearly, also this system, I think maybe Kubilai can talk a little bit more about this. It's built, this is an example for one site, one server, but it's completely scalable, so you can expand this infinitely if you want to. So, yeah. So let's have a look at the system very briefly. So should you decide to go for octoplant, what you have in fact is a number of user clients. I'm not going to show all of it. It's a fairly complex system with lots of functionality. But overall, it supports AD, so you will find no problems in implementing your current setup. You have a user client. I'll show you just a screenshot from that. That's where most people would do the daily work. We have an admin client. Again, you can do a lot of stuff in there, but I think the key is that you also administer automatic backups from in there. And then finally, sort of the toppings on the cake, I'll talk a little bit about the octoplant hub. So let's have a look at it. So this is a screenshot from the versioning part of octoplant. And please note, and I think this is really important when we talk about systems like this, or any systems for that matter, it's very, very accessible to look at. So at the top you have sort of a band of the most commonly used functions. So like 90% of the times that you're actually working with this, you just use those. You will be using those. Below here you have the 5 versions of this specific project, and as you can note, or as you can see here, you have the username, so who did this, when did they do it, sitting over there, the timestamp, change request number 1171, and comments on that. So even if you have people changing jobs, I mean the average tenure at the moment is 3 years for people working on for a specific company. So even if they change jobs, you'll still be able to go in here and say, what have they done? What changes have been done recently to this project? And you maintain your visibility throughout that process. So traceability is key. So yeah, just a note on the transparency component of this as well, because again, this is the version control you have here. You have the 5 different versions sitting here, and you also have, of course, the project tree here with your factory or the layout of your factory. But the neat thing here is you can actually take this and say, okay, I have a vendor or subcontractor doing something for me. He sent a project back to me. I put it on the server. And then I can actually say, okay, so what's the difference between those two? Or number 5 and number 1, or number 1 and number 2. And in this case, it's ladder logic. That'll actually allow me to say, okay, he made these, whatever changes. And if it's not working as intended, you can always go into octoplant and you can compare these different versions. Say, right, okay, it's because he made an error in whatever, basically. So that's really like elevating backup and version control to sort of the next level here. So for the backup part of it as well, again, Kubilai will dive a little bit more into this. Again, we have this super intuitive layout with the band at the top. Again, 95% of or 90% of all the work you do will be done simply using this interface. You have a very visible or very easily understandable project tree on your left side over there. And let's assume that I'm a technician or whatever working on a factory, and I decide I want to do a automatic backup of this specific project that's being highlighted here. I think it's a Siemens S7. So what I do simply is I take it with my mouse and drag it into the sensor. It's in Siemens S7. octoplant supports that fully. So it will, of course, recognize it and pre-populate a lot of the information regarding this over here. And, for example, number of backups that you want for this specific project, and so on and so forth. I know that's not going to be the case, but assuming that it actually hits it spot on, what you simply do is you press save down here, and you have an automatic backup job. The world is not like that. So there's going to be lots of issues, and there's going to be lots of unique legacy setups and lots of problems. So it's always going to be a little bit more complex than that. But this is sort of the basic idea, and this is where octoplant, or the direction octoplant is working towards. So now we have version control, we have backup, we have compare, but sort of to fit into all the NIS2 issues that Franz also very nicely summed up and talked about, we need to have a way of lifting this information up to a level where you can actually act on it on a more sort of meta or general level. And for that we have the octoplant hub. And what I'm showing you now, it's octoplant hub, which is used for, or it's stored or run locally on your OT infrastructure. So this again, there's no sort of holes outside, or you don't need to have access from outside to within your OT environment. So it's completely contained within your current setup. In this, sort of self-explanatory, you can get an overview of job status, for example, job logs, duration, etc., etc. And this is sort of the tool that many of you will be hopefully looking anxiously to get hold of, that will allow you to actually talk to your boss and explain to them, so what's sort of the development? Do we have a positive development here? What's the trend in terms of jobs, number of jobs or issues, and whatnot. So it's elevating it to a level where you can actually act on it on a more general sort of level. So I have a screenshot here of the job status, and again, you have a lot of information here, and you know, I'm sure we can play around with it a little bit later today. But in this case, job status, 21 components, 75 jobs. Blah, 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 lots of information sitting here. So if I check in Monday morning and I want to have an overlook of what is actually going on here, I can simply, again, take my mouse and click on the blue part here if I want to do that, see what's the jobs where the version sitting on the PLC, for example, is actually different to the one sitting on the server. If I click on that, I get a complete list down here of all the relevant jobs. So again, very, very easy, accessible, makes it possible for you to handle it in a good way. And as I said before, and I'll say it again now, this is all about transparency, giving you the tools and the knowledge that you need to have to sort of take this to the next level. And I think one of the things that I particularly like about this, which I think is really sort of beyond what you'd expect here, is that when you have a system like octoplant, it does take a backup of a project, for example. The basic idea is that octoplant will take a copy of all of it. So you don't only have like parts of the project, you'll take a copy of everything within that. And obviously, clearly in some cases, or most cases, you can also get information out of that, or there will be information within that about, for example, firmware versions of your PLCs. And as you all know, having hundreds, if not thousands of assets or devices sitting out there, it can be really difficult. It's a very, very time-consuming job to go through every single one of them and assess what's the current status on something. But with this tool, with the asset inventory service, which is part of this, you can actually get that information. And what it can do is, it'll take the information in firmware, for example, it'll compare it up against a CVE database with known vulnerabilities in it, and you can actually get a report based on that. You get information on, so what sort of risk, what's the risk level for that. Let's see if I have something here on that as well. So you get quite a detailed information about the criticality of this, and why is it critical. And then it's sort of up to you to decide, is this something that we can live with? Again, back to France, you need to sort of assess whether or not this is something that you're happy with. Is it okay? Do we want to proceed with that? Or do we need to act on it based on this? So this is sort of, in sort of my imagination, octoplant is the foundation for your ability to be able to comply. So you need the tools like this. Also, again, a little bit more of the same here. You can get like a specific list again of the vulnerabilities if you had this asset inventory service function. where you can simply go in and you can basically use this as a list to work according to. So very, very nice feature. So the key again, if you need to act, you first of all need data to act on.